Hi, everyone, and we're live on YouTube. It's been a long time since I've been on live like this. I really want to reach out and see what you guys are thinking and doing. And so I'll be staying on till we'll see if we get anyone. If not, I did want to talk about, building healthy habits and what we can do to sustain those healthy habits once we've built those in and also discuss how to stop the unfavorable habits that are hindering our health. So I'm excited to be here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type them here and I'll see them available. First of all, when we look at as a physician, I'm constantly looking at personal habits of my patients. And that's because they require at least the desire to change habits or the desire to build these healthy habits. But how do you do that? How do you tell someone, I really need you to change that diet you've been eating for your entire life, for many decades, to eating, a whole food plant-based diet. I need you to start moving. I need you to start sleeping better. I need you to decrease your stress. It's like it can be entirely too much in one conversation. So the first thing you want to do when you go to look at building a healthy habit is first you got to understand what is a habit, right? So a habit is literally your brain's way of saving time and saving you thinking power. So if you can think of a time when it was hard for you to learn something new, like driving a car, I know that can be very frustrating for young teenagers, but it's even more frustrating for parents. Trust me, I've taken the side seat there with three teenagers at one time, and that was fun. So, but anyway, it was really hard, right? At first, you had to like, which side is the gas pedal? Which side is the brake? Wait, was it up or down to make a left or right turn? All these things you had to actually have thinking power for. But now it's just, I've been driving for 35 some odd years. And so what you think now is like, wow, this is so easy, right? It's like you don't even, sometimes you forget even how you get home, which is not smart. But anyway, that is really interesting. So what your brain has done is it's made it easier for you to do that habit. So how do you do that? How do you look at a habit and say, okay, I want to change this habit or dismantle a habit or build a new habit? First of all, a habit has three components, right? So you need to have a trigger or some type of a prompt to make the behavior actually happen. So when you think about behaviors in a habit loop, which there's a really good book called The Power of Habit by Duhigg. And here we go. I like to draw. So I'm going to draw this out for you guys. So basically you have a trigger, you have which triggers the behavior, which causes a reward, which hits those little dopamine receptors and makes it enjoyable to do again, which can build these cravings, right? So if you have this trigger, let's say it's walking in the mall and you smell those Cinnabons, and you're like, hi, Leah. Leah says hi. And so basically you smell it, and I tell you, they must put them in the vents or something because you can smell these things all over the place. So then you smell it, right? And so that is your prompt. Your motivation is like, I remember the taste. It melts in your mouth. It's delicious. And you go looking for it. So they've trained us with those smells to desire the reward of eating it. So the behavior is going to find the Cinnabon, eating the Cinnabon, and then you get the reward of the taste of this highly palatable, not healthy food. But even still, just to prove a point, what you'll see here is you have now that reward, right, which builds into the craving. And you may be at home and you think of something, or something may trigger. You may even see a commercial for a clothing store, and it's a store in the mall, and then you think, oh, while I was in the mall, I like that smell of the Cinnabons. Leah says it makes me hungry just thinking of it. Exactly. And so they've trained us quite well. So that's the kind of power that habits can have, right? So how do you even break that habit? Well, I think it's easier first if we talk about how to build a healthy habit, and then we'll have some tools to understand how to break the unhealthy habits, right? So now let's say if you really want to build a healthy habit or just a habit in general, what does that look like? So first of all, we have to go back and think about how we're going to design behavior. So when you have a child, for example, and you want the child to do something, you need to put that child in an environment that it's easy to do. Mrs. Plant says, hi there. And what you want to do is build the environment for one, it's easy to do the behavior, right? So, if you want your kiddo to eat something healthy, you put the healthy snacks on your table, the bananas, the oranges, the apples, all of those things. So when they see it as a prompt, and they're hungry, they'll reach for that versus maybe something else that's hidden in the back of the cabinet, like the chips or cookies, make it harder to get to those. And that'll make the behavior harder to do. But if you want to build this healthy habit, make your environment conducive to doing that behavior that you want to have done. So you'll have the prompt, and then you have the ability to do it. This plant says that's what we do with our plant-based grandson. Absolutely. And if you could see my kitchen, it's just, the spread is everywhere. It's like plants are everywhere. It's overwhelming. And so that's just I want you to start thinking about that. Environment's really key. And so then there's another really helpful model. It's called the Fogg model, or the Fogg behavior model. And again, pulling up the drawing, it's just so much easier. So this is good. I want to just start with this. So any behavior, now that I'm talking any behavior, needs to have three elements: motivation and the ability and prompt. So motivation, remember, wax and wane. So that's why people who say, I have the New Year's resolution, I'm going to run 10 miles, or I'm going to exercise every day, they do really well for the first few days, maybe a few weeks, and then it just falls off because motivation wax and wanes. Life is hard. Maybe what they want to do is too much too soon. So we got to think about motivation is not really the first go-to. I love all those motivational memes, but they're really not going to get you where you want to go in the long, sustainable term. So what you want to do is think about motivation, but really these two are the more important ones. It's the ability and the prompt, right? So you need to have the ability to do something. For example, and I said this can apply to any behavior. So if you go, by the way, the book is called Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg that explains all this. And I took a special boot camp. I interviewed him on the podcast. I think his interview is down here in one of those videos. So check it out, guys. It's really good. So let's say you're in the middle of the night and you have to pee because your bladder wakes you up and your bladder's like, yo, I got to empty out this urine. And so you're like, okay, so here's the prompt, right? You have motivation because, well, nobody wants to be wetting on themselves in the middle of the night. And you have the ability, the bathroom's right here off the side of the bedroom. And you then get the ability to do it, and you've done the behavior, which is urinating, right? So you have the prompt, which is your bladder. You have the motivation because, well, you want to empty your bladder, and you have the ability because the bathroom's right there, right? So that's just a silly example, but it really kind of illustrates the importance of what behavior is and breaking it down to these elements, because then you can build in your environment that is conducive to the behavior that you want. Okay, so I hope that wasn't too difficult, but let's talk about this here. So here's the Fogg behavior model, and you have motivation, you have high and low. Remember, it waxes and wanes. You have the ability, which is hard and easy. And then this is called an action line. So this is a P for prompt. So if I have high motivation to do something that's really hard, I might be on this side of the action line. So when I get a prompt, the behavior happens. For example, I went to medical school with 3 little kids. They were 5, 3, and 10 months when I started medical school. It was really hard, but I also had extremely high motivation. So I made it happen day after day, grind after grind, year after year, right? So that's how you become a doctor with 3 little kids. You have to have high motivation, and it was really hard to do. But what I did, though, in medical school, might be very useful for people to understand, is I had to make it easier while I was in medical school to actually get through medical school. So how did I do that? How did I learn tons of knowledge very quickly? Well, it cracks me up when I tell people I actually made it through medical school by drawing cartoons. And you're like, okay. So what does that mean? When I was in medical school, I was in a pharmacology class, and remember, this is back in the late 90s. So it's been a while, guys. So they had me, I don't know, it was like a 2-inch stack of papers, and like, here's your pharmacology notes. This is before you had the computers and your whatever they emailed into you or whatever. I'm like, oh, so this is what we're going to learn for the semester. Like, oh no, that's just for the next 2 weeks. I freaked out because I don't know if you ever had 3 little kids under the age of 5. Well, actually they were under 4 when they were born, the last one. But you're just like, how am I going to go finish all this? I was in a dual major, MD, MBA, with 3 little kids, a sick grandmother at home, and a husband who drove 100 miles one way to work every single day and back so I could go to medical school. I was like, I'm going to fail. So what do I do? And so what happened was I started doodling. I've been a doodler and drawer since I was a kid. So I was like, someone had mentioned to me that they'd use the visual component in the cartoons and made it funny to memorize large sums of data. So I would take, like, for example, peptidoglycans, which is a class of drugs, and drew a Pepsi bottle. And then I drew all the different, drugs that were associated in that class, like vancomycin. So I drew a little vein and I colored it red for the Flushing syndrome. And I literally drew that out. My classmates started using them. And then I ended up publishing 7 books while in medical school, all based on ways for me to memorize stuff. But what was amazing was I can still remember that, and that's been over 20 years, right? You can remember those type of things. But I made the ability from hard, just rote memory, to easy by drawing cartoons that are funny and going from there. So that's the same idea. You want to make the ability easy. So that could also be, you want to build something easy. So let's say now we have high motivation, low motivation. Maybe you have motivation to run. So what you want to do is build that into your routine, but you need to make it easy. You don't start running 10 miles a day. You start with maybe just walking around the block or running around the block or doing a walk run program, right? And you don't do it for an hour a day. Maybe you do it for 5 minutes a day. Sometimes you just put on your shoes and it's like, I did it. I put on my shoes. But, again, you just need to make it easy. What is the smallest component of whatever activity you want to do, and what's the smallest part of it you can do? So basically, you make it easy. The ability is where we're at. Forget the motivation, but look at the ability. And then what happens, even when you have low motivation, but you made this very easy, boom, you're across this action line. So when you get prompted, you'll actually do the behavior. So the other thing is you got to build in your prompt. So anchor whatever the behavior is that you want to do into your day-to-day routine. For example, let's say I want to run. I have a dog. The dog's going to be my prompt. The dog's going to need to pee every day. So I take the dog out, but I already have my shoes on. I'm already going outside. I'm already up and doing this every single day. And my motivation is I want to exercise and get healthier. But the dog's going to be my anchor, my routine. So the dog's my prompt. I'm getting dressed because I still have to get dressed. I don't want to go out in my PJs to see the neighborhood. And I walk her, I take her back in, and then I go do my thing. I go run, or maybe you run with your dog. My dog's a little crazy on the leash, so it's dangerous for me. It could take some time to train her. But, then you go and you do your 5 minutes of exercise and you're done for the day. And the other thing is you need to get that reward beyond the fact that you feel accomplished is, how do you celebrate? Celebrate every small achievement, because that starts that dopamine response, right? That reward center just gets kicked off and it's like, ooh, I like it. So, what I do, I've had a thing for stickers since I was a kid. I really am a simple-minded human. And what you'll want to do, when I was a kid, we'd get those little aluminum stars, like blue or red or whatever color. And I would get so thrilled to get one of those. And so what I've done is I have my calendar of my run schedules. And then I found some fun stickers, and these are some of my puffy little bird stickers. And they're so much fun to go back and flip through my calendar and see how many days am I rewarding myself with these crazy stickers. But maybe it's just simple as crossing it off on a calendar for you. Maybe it's a high five. Maybe it's a, whatever it is you like to reward yourself. Make it something simple that you enjoy doing. And so that really is it. So when you want to build your behavior, you have to build your environment to be conducive to that behavior. But how do I break that bad habit now? Well, what can we do? We can demotivate us, right? So for example, I had a patient once who was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I am not making this up. 2 packs a day, that's 40 cigarettes a day. It's like, how do you have time to do anything else, right? So what happened was, I had harassed him for years. Stop smoking. Please stop smoking. You're going to die from cancer. Use all the tactics that they teach you. And what ended up happening was he stopped in one day, but it had nothing to do with what I said. And it had nothing to do with his potential future health issues. His granddaughter came up to him one day and she was crying. She goes, Pop up. I don't want you to die. And he goes, I'm not going to die, sweetie. What's the problem? She goes, everybody who smokes dies. And then right at that moment, guess what happened? The reward for smoking completely disappeared because his heart broke at the thought of him smoking. There was nothing in smoking that was more rewarding than seeing his granddaughter not concerned about his health or dying, right? There's no way that he was going to smoke and break the heart of his granddaughter, who he absolutely adored. And he smoked and he never desired to smoke again. He walked away from decades of smoking 2 packs a day because of that one incident. So really the key here is to break the reward. So how do we do that? There's some things called mindfulness that you can do. So for example, Dotsie Bosch, by the way, guys, I interviewed her. She's on one of the videos down here. And if you want to listen to the audio, you can listen to the audio podcast as well. She was, she's an Olympian, right? She was one of the oldest female cyclists in the Olympics that won on the track cycling, which is an amazing accomplishment. I don't ever want to underestimate that. But the other thing that people don't know as much about is that before she actually started on her athletic career, she was she had a cocaine habit, and she also had an eating disorder. And so I had read about this, and I was intrigued because I was like, listen, how did she do that? Because if I can learn how she did that, you can translate that to someone who, wants to stop eating processed foods, or translate that to someone who wants to stop another bad habit, right? And I asked her, I said, Dotsie, how did you stop this habit of cocaine and your eating disorder? And she goes, oh, I just found a therapist that would work with me. I was like, okay, again, Dotsie, how did this happen? Tell me what the therapist did. She goes, well, the therapist let me do what I want to do. I was like, oh my goodness. So I had to reframe my question again. I was like, can you please go into detail? What did that look like? And what happened was she she said, my therapist made me buy these little blue dots. I was like, okay. And she said she made me stick them on whatever was my trigger. Remember the trigger as far as the habit, right? She made me put them on the trigger of whatever the behavior was. Maybe it's the toilet because she would binge. Maybe it was the refrigerator because she would go and eat mindlessly, whatever it was. She said she made me promise that whenever I would have these urges or the craving or the desire to go do this behavior, and I saw the blue dot, I had to stop for 30 seconds or a minute or whatever, and start asking myself a series of questions, and not in a judgmental way, but just in a very objective manner. Why am I doing this? Do I want to do this? How am I going to feel afterwards? What's going on in my body? Really being mindful of the present moment that's leading to this behavior that we know is destructive. And what's interesting to understand is that curiosity in and of itself gives you a dopamine hit. So just even being curious about your own behaviors that you've created these habits is an interesting dopamine hit, right? So that mindfulness experience is actually enjoyable. You'll get serotonin, you'll get some amazing endorphins, you'll feel good in the moment because you're like, oh wow, I'm learning about myself. And so what happened was she said that every time she did that, at the first, she goes, and then my therapist said at the end of that 30 seconds, I could just go do what I want. And she's like, I'm like, okay. So she said for several weeks, she just did what she wanted. She's like, I did my thing and then I stopped. She goes, but over the course of months, 3-4 months, she found that she desired not to do it anymore. And many more times than not, she was actually walking away from the behavior because she didn't want to do it anymore. So if you can dismantle the reward through mindfulness practices of intuitively looking inside of you, asking yourself your questions, asking what's going on, learning some other behaviors that will help replace the stress or anxiety, that's how to deal with something, for maybe some deep breathing, physiologic sigh, where you go, and then you're just kind of like when you see someone crying, and they're like this and they go, right? That really, that deeper sigh, where the inhale is a little bit faster than your exhale is longer, it stimulates the parasympathetic hormones, which your nervous system, which decreases the stress, and it changes things that are going on in your physiology that allows you to deal with the stress. So anyway, just doing these other things, being that mindful, asking those practice will help you dismantle the bad behavior. And is it as simple as that? Is it hard? Sure. Are you going to be 100% 100% of the time? No. But that is part of human nature and part of the journey. And, that's, again, you just build in your behavior. Hey, Bill. Bill Blaze is saying hi with a cute emoji. But does anyone have any questions about that? Please feel free, because I just feel like this really is going to be key to us changing the habits that are leading to such destructive health in the United States. And then hopefully, as we have greater demand for these healthy products and healthy habits, our food system will change. So then it just becomes the default decision is to eat healthy because there really is no other decision. Like you just eat healthy because that's what's available. And then we're creating this snowball effect of continual looking for health. So really excited to see. So who's all watching? Can you guys say where you're from? And if did you have any questions about, building those healthy habits and breaking the bad ones? Because I think that is such an intriguing thing. So I know, for example, Bill's in New York. Excellent. I'm in Colorado and it snowed yesterday. um, but I want to really build on that habit of the drawing, right? So, because that is really enjoyable for me, and it's a de-stressor, and I just truly enjoy it so much, and I want to create that environment to do that. So how do I do that? Well, I build in time and where I'm going to do it, and then I start small. Maybe I just want to start with a small project. Leah says, I have a container of pineapple sitting on my counter while I'm preparing dinner so I don't snack on anything else. And pineapple is a delicious snack. Go, Leah. How is the anchor picked to not overeat? Okay, so let's say, let's first of all, when are you overeating? So can you tell me a little bit about, Anne, when are you overeating? And then let's look at your habit of overeating, right? So first we have to dissect the habit. When's it occurring? Leah says she's watching from Canada. Go Canada. I just interviewed a gentleman. He was actually the founder of PlantX. Check it out, plantx.com, from Canada. Ontario, awesome. Vancouver's one of my favorite cities. But Anne, to get back to your question, the anchor, first of all, oh wow, Ronaldo's watching from the Philippines. Hey, my husband's Filipino, by the way, and all my 3 children. That's why they don't look like me. They're beautiful. But just after eating meal, just want more. Okay, so let's think about this. So first of all, are you eating healthy foods? Bill says I'm a food addict. Well, I think we all have a little bit. If you put in some of those vegan Girl Scout cookies, those Thin Mints, you would say I'm a food addict because literally the whole box is on it. And you think I'm kidding, but I'm not. There's some bad behavior that can occur there. But anyway, when you think about overeating and when you're doing it, so if you are seriously still hungry after eating a full meal, what are you eating, right? So are these empty calories? Are these foods that are lacking in fiber? So when you consume plant foods, whole plant foods, these are lower in calorie, but they expand the stomach and they give you a small, they slowly digest and they give you that continuous release of glucose versus this high and low. So there's some things there that will be helpful. And if you're still hungry after eating a plant meal, go back and eat more of the lower caloric things, but check in, ask yourself, why am I wanting more food? Why am I stuffed? Am I sitting in front of the television eating? What are the activities around you that may be feeding into? Are you eating mindlessly? Another thing you can do is actually eat mindfully. And for example, when you're eating something, get away from the computer, get away from the TV, sit down in a calm environment, right? You're not on your phone, you're not, you have your family with you or whatever, and you put the food down, but use your left hand if you're right-handed or the opposite. Pick up your food, it slows you down, okay? Put the utensil back down next to the plate or the table and really chew your food and think about the food. Think about what your tastes are. How's it making you feel? How did that food actually get to your plate? Where did it grow? Who picked it? Who delivered it to the grocery store? What did you have to do to make that delicious food on your plate? And that even that process of slowing down, taking 20 minutes to eat a meal, 30 minutes to eat a meal, really will give your body a chance to respond and say, okay, I think I'm full, and give you a chance. But if you're eating when you're stressed and you're eating way more than you think, you haven't had the opportunity in the mind to understand and enjoy that meal. Anne says, yes, I'm SOS free, hopefully plant-based, the same dish, watching TV always. So Anne, what I would say is really bring in the practice of mindful eating. Bill says, thanks, Dr. Laurie. Fiber is key. A thorough chew and slow pace are also great. Absolutely. I would say this, if you're really just entering into the mindful eating side of things, On healthyhumanrevolution.com, I do have a way, there's a course on overcoming cravings. And this is through years of counseling patients, doing the research, and really looking at what's working, interviews with hundreds of guests on my podcast, and this seems to really hold true. What I'd recommend, Anne, is take a raisin, right? So you have a raisin, or it could be anything, but a grape or whatever, but a raisin works well. You put it in your hand, and John Kabat-Zinn came up with this, and I want you to just hold it. And then this is going to take a few minutes. It's going to be crazy, but it works. I promise. It really makes you think differently. You put the raisin in your hand and you start thinking. I want you just to observe the raisin, like you are new to this earth and you've never seen a raisin before. And you're looking at it and going, wow, look at the texture. How does it look? Touch it, feel it, roll it. Is it stickiness? Smell it. And what begins to happen as you're just observing this simple dried grape? You may notice some salivation. You may be going, you remember raisins were in your lunch when you were a kid. You may be having all sorts of sensations occurring. And what you do at that point, and you roll it in your fingers, you place it in your mouth, but you don't chew. Okay, you just see what your tongue does. Roll it around in your mouth. See what that's doing. Just kind of enjoy it. And then chew it until it's literally liquefied and you can't chew no more. And then just slowly swallow. But during that whole time, think about what's going on in your body. What's the taste, the texture, the smell. Try to use all your senses. It had a sound when you roll it between your fingers. And that process actually becomes mindful. And you try to do that even through a meal. Instead of rushing through breakfast, sit down and just, look at the oatmeal, look at the berries, look at the colors, look at, the smells and the how does it feel when you pull them out of the box or whatever. Just take your time to really step back and enjoy the food for what it is. I think that's the first step in overcoming that desire to eat more, because you're slowing down the process of eating. Because if you're watching television, you're going to consume the food way faster and your body's not going to have a chance to register what's going on. And then you still want some more food because you're also in that habit of watching television. You eat with watching television. So change the habit by changing the location of where you are and changing the process of the eating the meal itself. Okay. Bill says, what are your thoughts? Fruits digest fast, fruits digest slow. Yes. Fruits first or veggies first? Veggies. Thanks, Anne. To slow the uptake, right? So it depends on what you're eating. I do know that, like with my diabetics, for example, I do try to get them to eat the veggies first. It just does better. It kind of blunts any of the more starchy foods that they may be consuming, so you don't get quite that high with the blood sugars. And so that's what I would suggest. But honestly, most of the time my meals are mixed, right? So if I have I don't know, if I have a bowl, maybe, I do a lot of soups. So it's really, because I'm not a huge salad fan. Salads, yeah, I eat some salads, but most of the time I'm getting my greens in every day, but I'm getting them in different means. I throw them in a wrap, I throw them in my soups, I throw them in my smoothie. I stuff them everywhere I can. But then, of course, I still do salads, but I have to make some yummy, delicious dressing to go on it. It's just, I don't know, it's just the way I am. Anne says she'll give it a try. Awesome. So I hope that is helpful. Do you guys have any other questions? And by the way, I hope you guys are fully aware of plant-based telehealth. Anthony Masiello and I launched that a year ago in March, and we are in all 50 states. We are the first plant-based lifestyle medicine in the entire country. And we also help the advise the group that we're in the UK, and they're good friends. And so we're super excited to see this movement take off. We have 7 doctors. We have 2 more joining us soon. And we've seen thousands of patients already. And so we're super excited to see where we're going. We're going to be offering some more group visits soon with expert teachers. And we're working on getting that launched next. So definitely, Bill says, as an Ayurvedic mixed bowl. Honestly, I'm not sure what that would entail. My bowls will typically have a grain, a bean or a legume, tons of vegetables, and then they'll have some type of dressing. Ronaldo says, shout out Posa family Marbas here at Seattle, Washington. Hello, it's Tita Cherica Marbas. Oh, these are family. um, and Leah says, do you think smoothies will inhibit weight loss, whole food plant-based, even if there's no sugar or dairy added? I don't think they inhibit weight loss. Let me explain my thoughts on smoothies. First of all, I understand there are many gurus in this space who I absolutely adore and respect, and they literally pave the way for the rest of us in this movement. And and they may be anti-smoothie. I use any method that I can get my patients to consume these healthy foods. It's so very important. So what you need to look at smoothies is understand this is a quantity of food that may have taken you an hour to eat and by regular chewing means, and now you've liquefied it, right? So instead of drinking it very quickly and gulping it down, I want you to take the same time that it would have taken you to eat it, to consume it, right? So instead of, you know, I mean, I could literally drink 32 ounces of a smoothie in 10 minutes easily if I wanted to. But instead, what I'd like you to do is take a sip, sit down, be doing whatever you're doing, socializing with family, whatever that is, and then just sip it over a period of time, half an hour to an hour, preferably. And then that way you're still going to be getting the same number of calories, even if you were eating it, but you're also not going to have this huge influx of large calories, carbohydrates, and your body will respond very differently over a slow intake versus a very quick intake. Hope that makes sense. Cat Kit Bill says mistake spelling Ayurvedic. I'm sorry, Bill, I don't know exactly what that would be in a bowl. It sounds awesome, however. Kit says, is insurance accepted for doctor appointments? Basically, not at the moment. So if you're in the United States, and we see international folks as well, obviously we can't practice medicine, but we give some coaching guidance in how to work with their doctors and some suggestions on what to do if they have certain conditions. With insurance, it's really difficult. First of all, to accept insurance, you have to come to an agreement with every single insurance company, and there's thousands in the United States. And then each provider has to be credentialed, and that takes 2 to 3 months. So every one of your physicians has to be credentialed with every one of those insurance companies. The insurance company, if you send in a claim, can reject it, even though you've come to an agreement, because they may not like the coding that you've done. So you really have to employ a large billing department. When Anthony and I started, this was just literally 2 people. It was myself seeing patients in 13 states and Anthony doing everything else. And I was helping as I could because I was also working another regular job. And we've added, Chris Miller, we have Dr. Michael Clapper, and then we added some other amazing doctors, Dr. Jeff Pierce, Dr. Kim Scheuer, Dr. Nikki Davis, Dr. Elizabeth Fontaine. We have 2 other docs joining us soon. And so those 2 things have grown, and we're just unable. But what we can do is give you a super bill where you can submit it to your insurance yourself, except for Medicare. Medicare has very strict laws on that, that if you accept Medicare, or if you are enrolled in Medicare as a provider, you have to accept whatever they're willing to pay, which can be literally less than $15 sometimes. It just really depends. It's a hard situation. The United States is not an easy place to navigate when you're trying to create a national practice at that. So we're in all 50 states and DC. And so it's not easy. It took us a year to actually grow, because we want to grow a very sustainable practice. You have to be very mindful of the business side of this in a very difficult marketplace. But we knew the need was there. We have doctors who want to see patients and patients who want to see the doctors. And we want the doctors to be able to make an affordable living and not have to do this as, outside of another stressful full-time medical practice. And so we really worked hard to be very lean so we can pay the doctors well, but also try to make this as affordable for our patients as possible. We really are being very thoughtful about that. And that's why we're going to be launching group visits, which will be a cheaper option for patients, and still get some of the care. And we think there's some benefits also to having group visits as well, because you'll have that community aspect of it, which is really exciting to see that evolve. But we just really wanted to make ourselves available to everybody in the United States, around the world, who wants this knowledge and this experience so we can help. So Leah says, yes, I love smoothies, and I'm always conflicted after hearing my favorite Dr. Esselstyn. I understand. I love Dr. Esselstyn too. But, it's kind of like when you're pregnant, you get all this amazing advice from people that you completely appreciate and respect, but not all advice is for you. Other than eating a plant, guys, and I'm telling you just to eat your plants. Plant-based diet is for everybody. I don't care who you are. You need to eat your plants. Okay. Kat says, okay. I'm sorry, Kat. I know that was a very long answer to your question, but I just really want people to appreciate what we've really tried to do for you, and anyone who wants to see us. And we just are thankful for patients who are willing to make that payment, and we try to make it the best half hour of your time if we can. Let's see. Bill says, with consuming smoothies and juices, won't the fiber be separated from the sugars, fructose? Actually, juices, yes. I don't promote juice or juicing. The smoothies, you still have the fiber. You're just breaking it up. You're just doing the mechanical act of chewing, which if you're really wanting to start that salvation, you can actually chew. If you just make your smoothie a little bit more chunky and then just chew it a little bit and then swallow, you can do that as well. Leah says, Canada is so much easier for healthcare and insurances. Yes, it is. Kat's got hearts. Bill says, Leros, I agree. Kat says, can you guys order blood work and such, and what services can we get? Absolutely. So we have a lab. We have an agreement with LabCorp and Quest Diagnostics, and those are around the country. We can order any labs that you need or desire, which your insurance, we can bill your insurance. The labs don't care who you are. They're just billing for their services of running the labs. So the labs can definitely be run through insurance, including Medicare. And so can pharmaceuticals and prescriptions, by the way. So we can do that. So for example, most of my patients, I see upwards of about almost 140 patients a month, and I'm just doing this part-time right now because I'm still running the business side. Most of these guys are diabetic, and what's amazing is you can really see some awesome responses very quickly. And we have a great relationship with Cyrus and Robbie for Mastering Diabetes and Chef AJ, and we've had such some amazing support from our community, and we're so thankful for that. And we've also worked with patients with cholesterol. I'm working actually on becoming certified in lipid management because I just think it's such an important thing. I'm trying to, build in some experts like Dr. Kim Williams, hopefully, or maybe I can get the Shurzais, maybe I can get Cyrus and Robbie to come in and help teach. And, we just want to make the knowledge accessible and the day-to-day practice. So the one thing to understand is if you hear the guru speaking, again, who I adore and appreciate and love, it's really easy to speak the knowledge or talk about the science or research or whatever, but to do the day-to-day practice takes some really serious fine-tuning. And I have 9 years experience of doing the lifestyle medicine side with plant-based living, and that takes some experience in that, we're building a network of physicians who are going to be extremely knowledgeable in how to help someone with high blood pressure, who can't lose weight, who are trying to raise their kids, who have gestational diabetes. I have type 1 diabetics. My youngest was 4. To my oldest patient on plant-based health is in their 80s. So you have a wide range of patients with multiple things: inflammatory bowel disease, asthma, you name it, any of the autoimmune diseases. So those are the things that we're working on. So honestly, we could help you with many, many, many things. We do not replace your primary care doctor. I consider us the consultant to the primary care doctor because we take your tough cases and make them better. So Anne says, eating whole food plant-based, is there a recommendation to reduce triglycerides? Yeah, what to eat more of. You're welcome, Kat. She says, thank you for answering. It's my joy. Thank you for listening. So Anne, I would say your triglycerides, if they're still high, there's some interesting things that happen with triglycerides. So these are going to be the fats in your blood, and that can also affect your bad cholesterol, your LDL. So when you look at your triglycerides, you really want to make sure you're staying away from refined grains, breads, those type of things, dried fruit, juices, added sugars. I know you said you're SOS free, but I'm just mentioning that for others, oils, and those type of things, and really sticking to the whole foods. I would really also look at if there's been a tremendous amount of weight loss or ongoing weight loss. Sometimes that can actually increase your triglycerides. Make sure that you're getting your cholesterol panel in a fasting state. If you've been eating, sometimes that can be an elevated triglycerides there. I like to tell people, let's just keep this very simple, just always go in fasting. So I understand I don't need to worry about, necessarily the meal you had that morning. But sometimes also if you had a higher fat meal, the day before, sometimes your triglycerides might be a little bit higher. So just looking at, those foods and those things like that, that can certainly help. There's a few other things you can do. I love AMLA, AMLA. It's Indian gooseberry. It really can help with blood sugars, and it also helps with cholesterol. There's there's a variety of different things you can do, but it really depends. I'd stay away from pastas, even if they're bean pastas, anything that's refined, but just stick to the whole foods. That really would be your key for you. Um, yeah, less sugar, absolutely. Ongoing weight loss, why? Because the fat's breaking down and releasing the triglycerides. So you'll see this transient elevation of your triglycerides. I've seen it over and over and over again. It's interesting. Very, very interesting. And again, you don't see that until you see hundreds and hundreds of patients. Put the AMLA in the smoothies. Absolutely. AMLA is tart. I'll just say that much. You only need about half a teaspoon a day. And Cyrus and Robbie have a really yummy AMLA tea. I think it's amlagreen.com is their website, but also you can get another brand called Terrasol on Amazon. And that's one I have stored in your fridge. Throw in your AMLA, or you can put it in your oatmeal. You can put it in a soup. You could put it in whatever you like to cover up the taste you like. I have others who just put it in some water and drink it down. But anyway, Anne says, oh, thank you. You're welcome. Any other questions or anything else I can help with? And please, by the way, could you guys share maybe this video, but also share plantbasedtelehealth.com. We really want to try to get the word out, because we want to know, that the moment someone asks, where can I find a plant-based doctor? The very first thing that comes to mind is plant-based telehealth, literally, because we can see people from their homes, even if it's just for a one-time visit, and help them get on the right track, or if it's a weekly visit that needs to happen. We just really want to be there for people, and we appreciate anyone helping us share the word on plantbasedtelehealth.com. And that's just, it's really important that you guys help us grow organically, because that really is important. What was the name of the movie you were in? I haven't been in any movies. None at all. So, just the life of Laurie Marbas. That has been my movie. No movies. There's been some amazing documentaries that I do recommend if you guys haven't seen Seaspiracy. That one's really good. Wow. And really makes you think about our plastic waste situation, because we've all focused on plastic straws and other smaller things, and which is important. But did you know plastic straws are only 0.03% of the plastic waste in our oceans? More than half of the plastic waste is actually from fishing vessels. It's the nets, it's the other things that comprise the fishing industry. And literally some populations of our fish are down 90%. And if our oceans are dead, we're dead. This is really serious. So, and the only way to really be sustainable with your oceans and that environment in the industry is have no demand, right? So you just don't eat the fish. There's no way. The farm fish, you just guys have to watch it. It's on Netflix. It's pretty crazy. So, any other questions or anything else I can answer for you guys? This is really fun. I need to do this more often. Or yeah, give me some ideas actually what you guys would like me to teach. I know I'm going to be working on some programs for plant-based telehealth. I really want to build out one on menopause, as I'm 50 now, I'll be 51 in later this year. Things are different. And so that and osteoporosis is one I really want to focus on. Sandra says, I just had my first plant-based telehealth appointment. It was awesome. I think it was very affordable, better than the usual 5 minutes you get from your physician at a regular office. If you're on the fence, give it a try and you'll see. Thank you, Sandra. That was awesome. I appreciate that. Leah says, oh, you look so much younger. Thank you. I will tell you, I just give you a little history of how I came to a plant-based diet. It was 9 years ago. I had a patient who came in to see me in my regular office in Western Colorado in a town called Rifle and said, hey, Dr. Marbas, meat and dairy upset my stomach. And I'm going to make this a very long story short. And I said, stop eating meat and dairy, go eat whatever's left over. I didn't think that was a plant-based diet. She came back in 30 days, but brought her daughter, who was 16 years old, to the appointment with her, pulled her out of school. And as she came to the appointment, she said, tell Dr. Marbas what you did. And she goes, well, I helped my mom because remember, I'm in Rifle, Colorado. It's 10,000 people. There are no vegan stores or places to eat in 2012. They just didn't exist. And so they had to go buy food and cook it at home. And in that 30 days, her daughter pulled herself off 2 ADD medications in 30 days. And when I heard that, we had an amazing conversation. I started diving into the research, read the first book was T. Colin Campbell's book, The China Study, and I never looked back. And anyway, ended up going overnight home with my family. And it's a funny story how that all happened. But now my kids are 27. That 27-year-old is graduating medical school next month, moving to Boston for her family medicine residency. She's plant-based. She's going to be sharing the message. I birthed one. I feel like I've given the all. I birthed one and raised one. So, and then I have 2 boys, 25, Jonathan, who is working on breaking the 24-hour pull-up record. He's doing 900 pull-ups in 90 minutes right now. It's insane. And you don't ask me. I don't understand it myself. And then Gabriel is 22. He'll be 23 in October. And he is a film major at University of Colorado in his senior year, my last one. And my husband went plant-based, lost 70 pounds. And there's so much more to it, but that's really fun. But anyway, it all led to this. Let's see. Anne says, does eating algae sheets also hurt the ocean? No, not at all. Algae is a very sustainable thing. That stuff grows fast. And actually, I use algae omega-3s. If you want to talk about supplements, I think that's a question we get a lot. And I actually, obviously, you need B12 made by bacteria. We all know we need to be consuming B12. Most of the time, my patients are requiring 500 to 1,000 micrograms a day. I haven't found that the weekly dose is as effective, and actually sometimes they're still low because I want to see that B12 range between 600 and 1,200-ish. Because I found it just over practice, over seeing patients for 20 years, that when you're less than that 600, it's just not as optimal. Sometimes you get some symptoms. So if you can shoot between that 600 and 1,200, that's really good. And I found that most people are requiring 500 to 1,000 micrograms per day. Again, test, don't guess. I'm just giving you the general outline of what I use. And then vitamin D. I know there's some controversy around vitamin D, but again, after 2 decades of experience, looking at the research, understanding the value of being at certain levels, closer to that, definitely over 50, but closer to 75 to 100, it seems to be optimal. I think about bone health, your immune system being optimized. So those 2 I recommend most of the time. And then on occasion, algae omega-3s, depending on, again, I'll measure, and other symptoms. So I have seen patients, it's a small subset, but it's substantial enough that I recall them, who switched to a whole food plant-based diet and they begin to have joint pain. And especially in their small joints, sometimes in the larger joints. And it's a surprise because they didn't have it before. The only change was going to a plant-based diet. Now, so what I've done, and it worked across the board, every single one got better, was I started 4 things. I had them add a quarter cup of walnuts a day. I had them add a couple of tablespoons of ground flaxseed. I had them add algae omega-3s, and I add turmeric and ginger like in a capsule form, or you can just do the raw if you want. Every single one completely resolved. And I think what it is honestly, I think it's the algae omega-3s that have been the bigger player here, because I think some people just don't convert the shorter ALA to the longer EPA DHA. So That's my working hypothesis. Take it for what it's worth. Um, let's see here. Um, let's see. Let's see. My husband, let's see, where does it go? Leah Ross, my husband says the same thing that I look younger. Thanks. um, Leah says, Skinny Bitch was my first book, and then the China study. You know, Leah, they made me hold your comment, but I had to review. I was like, it was the name of a book. It's all good. I usually don't say those words either, but anyway. Bill says, and sea veggies are similar to land veggies, better than live animals, and can be done sustainably. Absolutely. Anne says, congrats. Rose says, is it safe to take flaxseed or chia seeds or flax oil or algae oil for omega-3s if you're taking 75 milligrams of Plavix a day to prevent clots? So that is really interesting. First of all, I did read a recent study where they use flax seed oil in compared to the actually algae omega-3s. And the flaxseed did not, the oil, and I'm not saying the flaxseed itself, but the oil did not improve the omega profile. So I would do the whole food. I would do the ground flaxseed or chia seeds. Yes, I think that would be fine. And it shouldn't affect your Plavix. Now, the algae, from what I've read, as long as you're less than 3,000 milligrams or 3 grams, below that, it should not increase your risk of bleeding. But I would also speak to your doctor to get that clarified. But if you're consuming a smaller amount, like I know Nordic Naturals has an algae omega-3 at 715 milligrams, you should probably be okay. But again, just run it by your regular doc and it should be fine though, as long as you're less than that 3,000 milligrams. Yes, on osteoporosis education. Yes, I really, that's a tough one. If we can really jump on that, because we may not, when you look at osteoporosis under general care guidelines, when you're looking at as a family practice and you're looking at how can I help someone with osteoporosis, when you're looking at medications, their goal is honestly just to halt the progress. If you see some stability or a slowing down of the progression of osteoporosis, they actually call that a win. Which is unfortunate. But I'm thinking, why do we have osteoporosis to begin with? And I'm not just talking the plant-based population. I'm talking about people, omnivores and people who eat regular, standard American diet. What is going on, right? And I really honestly think there's so many different elements. We're more sedentary. We're not getting outside. And I really believe vitamin D has a component of that, has to optimize your bone health. What do we need to be at? When, in what populations do they not have osteoporosis, and what is their vitamin D level? And those are some things that I'll be diving into the research, but that's just me thinking and trying to be very logical. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it works. Anne says, thanks, Bill. Rose says, thank you. And Paul says, da, whatever da is. I don't know if that's hello or hi, but yeah. And if there's anything else you guys want to know or learn about, but I think menopause is a big one. Definitely cholesterol, like a kind of like a comprehensive heart health program that anyone in around the country and the world can join, and really understanding what that means. What does it mean to be heart healthy, even outside of a whole food plant-based diet? Because we look at all elements, your sleep, your stress, your movement, your community, those social relationships, all of that. Paul says, day 1 of my 3-day food journal and prep for appointment with doctor. Excellent, Paul. Are you coming to the plant-based telehealth? If you don't mind me asking. Oh, he's coming to see me. Fantastic. Well, I'll be seeing you soon. I'm looking forward to meeting you. Leah says, what are the symptoms of iodine deficiency? Interesting. Eat only sea salt for years. So first of all, sea salt is not iodized. So you definitely, if you want to consume iodine, you need to be eating those sea vegetables or using iodized salt or taking an iodine supplement. The most you want to be consuming on a day-to-day basis of an iodine supplement is 150 micrograms, guys. Please put away those iodine supplements that are like, I had someone taking the other day, I think it was like 6.5 milligrams, which is a vast number, 10 times more than they should be consuming on a day-to-day basis. Anyway, iodine is important for your thyroid health, Right. So if you have low iodine, you can have a goiter, maybe subclinical hypothyroidism. You can have a few different things occurring, but it's really important for your thyroid health. I've been hypothyroid for 25 years since the birth of baby number two. And when I went on a plant based diet, my thyroid got substantially better and I had to drop my dose tremendously. And so I'm still on thyroid medication. It's the only medication I've taken. Um, and just at a much lower dose. So symptoms would be symptoms of hypothyroidism, or if you take too much, you can have also the opposite. You can actually cause hyperthyroidism, or sometimes a subclinical hyperthyroidism. There's a really interesting thing, but you can actually even cause a transient hyperthyroidism state if you have been iodine deficient for a long time and then suddenly you take a very large amount of iodine. You can actually cause it, like I said, you bump into hyperthyroid and you'll come out. But anyway, it would be more of those hypothyroid. You just over a long chronically iodine deficient and potentially have a goiter. And that's why I think it was 1994 that they started adding iodine to salt. And so that's what we use if we use salt, which isn't very often. But I've had my iodine checked and it's been fine. So that's the other thing you can do is actually use a 24-hour iodine or urine collection to check your iodine levels. A spot iodine is not very accurate. Rose says, in similar vein, are very green smoothies okay when taking Plavix? Yes, I think that should be fine. When you're thinking about vitamin K, you're worried about more, if you're worried about your green veggies and your high vitamin K foods, that's when you're on Coumadin or warfarin for blood thinners. But you should be fine with your smoothies, with your Plavix. Menopause, yes, looking forward to that one. See, I'm telling you, menopause is an interesting beast. You men are missing out. I feel like maybe we should give you some of our menopause. Leah says, good to know. Thank you. And yes to the menopause. See, I attract women in the similar age group, and menopause is a big, interesting thing. Yeah, it's just interesting. It's weird because when I was 41 or 40, how old was I? 2012, 41, early 2012, I was 41, and I went on a plant-based diet. It was different, right? And as I moved into my 50s, things are different, right? I'm perimenopausal, I'm not in menopause, but you can't eat the same way. You just can't do things. It's different. Things are different. And I'm as active or more active than I was. Things are just different, guys. I haven't quite figured out what that is, because when you read about it, they're like, oh no, it's just, it's not the hormones. This weight gain is not, because of certain fluctuations, as people are eating more, whatever, they're not as active. I was like, I don't agree with that. There's something that's very different. Anne says, how long of a fast prior to a blood test? 8 to 12 hours, drinking only water. That's my typical advice, unless you need to be longer for some reason. Bill says, it's the age group when disease gets more prevalent. Well, I think we've had decades of building up to it for sure. Things definitely change as you enter that middle age, but now we're seeing kids. For example, did you know kids, I call them kids, they're young adults. They're still kids, 18 to 35. And the highest risk for colon and rectal cancer? What? When is that okay? So these are my kids' age group. They're right in the middle of that cohort. They have higher risk of colon cancer than someone who's 50. People, wake up. We got an issue. We're killing our kids. That's more disturbing to me than killing myself, for sure. Yeah, yes, give them in the menopause. It's right in the name, menopause. Thank you. I agree. Isn't it enough that we had to have periods every month and birth children in that process? Not that I didn't love my children, but there's those delivery days were not easy or comfortable. Again, I apologize to my men here, but it is fun to teach you guys a little bit. Let's see here. Rose says, I'm interested in a discussion on menopause. I'm 54 and perimenopausal. Right there with you, sister. I gotcha. And Bill says, yes, years of bad habits. But Bill, now we're actually, we're pregnant with our babies and we're using our bad habits and we're turning on genetics that shouldn't be turned on, and we're raising our babies with these bad habits. So we're literally handing them a plate of chronic disease. And so here you go, have some chronic disease with your French fries. Yeah, so you can die earlier and you can live a shorter lifespan. My kids are like, Mom, I'm so thankful that you and Dad are vegan because honestly, we don't want to be changing your diapers when you're 70. I'm like, well, Lord willing, that will be the case, but okay. um, and Rose says, great to know about the pelvic issues. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Lee says, I'm also 54. I'll be 55 in July. Fantastic. So you guys are 66 babies. I'm telling you, these are great years. Later 60s, 70s. I was right at 1970. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing. And packaging it in a way that's easy for a patient to use and utilize and make it themselves. That's so very important. Women affect their grandchildren. Exactly. So did you know, for example, when my grandmother was pregnant with my mother's eggs were developed during that time of pregnancy while she was in my grandmother's womb. Okay? So my grandmother's diet, my grandmother's pregnancy affected my mother's health, which affected me because I was an egg waiting to do my thing. Well, 18 years later when my mother got pregnant with me. And then when my mother was pregnant with me, my eggs were developed. And so my three children were affected by my mother's habits when she was pregnant with me. And hence also my daughter, again, and it just creates that cycle. Women affected, and Rose says 1967. Yes, and 60s were great years. Bill says, wow. Elia says, mind blown. Yeah, I know, it's totally mind blowing. But also if you think about it, right? So when I'm seeing, when we were kids, if you're a 60s, 70s baby or earlier, whenever, there were not that many, overweight kids in your class. There was the occasional one or two. But now when you're looking at young kids and teenagers, 20% of our kids, and it might be even more now, the last statistic that I read, are overweight or obese. It's not okay. It is not okay. Oh my goodness. And thank goodness for plant-based living. I don't know what we would do. Imagine if we didn't have a plant-based lifestyle. What would we do? I mean, the ketogenic diet obviously is not healthy. It's healthier than a standard American diet in the sense that they're cutting out processed foods and stuff, but that's just another way to die faster. I mean, what would we do? I can't even. And if we weren't for all those amazing people who led the way to be where we are now in technology and products and the education, oh my gosh, it is so sad. Bill says I would be dead. I'll tell you what, I have horrible genetics. My biological father was 38 with his first heart attack. My mother's father died at 46. My mother had breast cancer. Her mother had breast cancer. All their sisters had breast cancer. I am genetically screwed. I really do believe, Bill, if I didn't switch over to plant-based diet when I should have done it earlier. If we should have known, I might have been dead by now as well, or not soon thereafter, just because something would have happened. And not that I ate terrible, but certainly don't eat the way I do now. So, but yeah, absolutely incredible, insane thing, this world. Dr. Esselstyn plan saved me. I had cabbage times 6. Wow. Bill, that's incredible. Bill has an awesome group on Facebook, by the way. Bill, what's the name of your group? Is it the Esselstyn? I can't remember exactly how do you say what your group is, but it's fun to be in there on occasion. Leah says, me too. Absolutely. Bill, what's your group on Facebook so we can encourage people to go join? Because you're always commenting in there. It's really good. And Bill's very gracious and lets us share our plant-based telehealth. Oh yeah, by the way, we have Thursdays, second and fourth Thursday at 12:30 Mountain Time. We do live Facebook feeds, live Q&A with our plant-based doctors, including Dr. Michael Clapper, Dr. Chris Miller, all those amazing doctors. And next Thursday at 10:15 Mountain Time AM, because of Dr. Michael Greger will be joining us. So his schedule made us move it up a few hours. So check it out. We're over on the Plant-Based Telehealth Facebook page. Bill's group, I knew this was Esoterian diet to reverse heart disease. There you go. I couldn't remember what the play off Dr. Esselstyn's name was, but yeah, Dr. Esselstyn has saved a lot of people, and he's an incredible human being. I met him for the first time in 2012, and changed my life as well. I went to Cleveland, hung out with him, learned quite a bit. Yeah, the evolution of medical practice, that's the next revolution we need to have happen to help change lives. So Leah says, Dad passed away when I was 27. Oh, wow. Or when you were 27. He says he was 47, heart attack. Mom passed away at 66, breast cancer. She and her mother and all mom's sisters, breast cancer. So I'm fighting it with whole food plant-based. Oh, wow. I'm so sorry to hear that. Bill says, as we esoterians often say, plants, planet, eat well, live well, share joy. I think that's a beautiful summary. Absolutely. Yeah, Leah, I feel you. I'm right there with you. There's even been males in my family that have had breast cancer. So, but we don't have the BRCA gene. They've been tested and those are negative. So obviously I think there's environment, but I don't eat the way my parents or my grandparents did. I eat much differently. My grandmother lived with my husband and I for 8 years. We've been married almost 28 years in a few weeks. And my in-laws lived with us for 6. My grandmother lived with us for 8. And she had breast cancer during that time while I was in medical school. And she used to just be so on me. Like, my daughter never liked milk. And she's like, if you don't offer milk to your child, that's abuse, in my opinion. Well, she made me feel bad because I wasn't offering milk to my children on a regular basis. So anyway, yeah. So, those hormones, who knows what was affecting, but she was also on, hormone replacement therapy, which again, I think some time is needed for a period of time when women are going through a very tough time with menopause, especially if they're surgical menopause and young, those are absolutely required. But when you're in this period and life is just so difficult because of the symptoms, those can be very helpful for a short period of time. But we turn menopause into a disease state, and it's not a disease state. If you live long enough, you go through menopause. That's what happens. Mama's vegetarian, so I chalk it up to the dairy. I really think dairy, if I have a patient who says I can't give up meat and dairy, what do? I always tell them to give up the dairy first, 100%, 100%. Because just makes no sense to me. And why I didn't think about this earlier. Did you guys ever ask yourself, why didn't I think about this earlier? Isn't that crazy? So very strange. But yeah, you're thinking we're drinking milk from a cow. Like, why would we think we need that? It's weird. It's just so weird. It's like the blinders fall off and you're just like, what was I thinking? Yes, but at least we're in the know now. Hey, and by the way, do you guys like my new background? My youngest one, it was just this wall. It was facing this way, and you can see my cane up there. But now my son says, Mom, you need to get with it. And so this was the next cool thing. There's pictures of the 3 babies up there. A photo of my daughter's friend who lived with us for a few months, who we've known for a long time. She's a photographer, took this awesome picture of beets. And then my time in the Air Force. And then my patient painted this for me. It's watermelon and strawberry and blueberries. Isn't that awesome? And then the Plantation Project gave me a memento for launching the journal and being their managing editor for 3 years. So I think it's cool. This plant is loving it. I got all my books. You can see the important ones. So let's see. Anne says, we were busy just living. Yeah. Do you mean just like living and not thinking? I totally get it. Well, not that we weren't thinking. We were thinking, but yeah, I just never, I don't know. It's just like such a shift in the paradigm. Like, it had to be a patient for me that had a dramatic change so young and say, I feel better eating this way and stop medications. I mean, that's literally what it took to slap me out of my walking, like in a trance or something. It's weird. It's weird. Yeah, not aware. Exactly. Rose said, such a nice background, very warm person. Thank you. We're working hard on it. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing how we change. And even if you move this way into health, then you start thinking about animals and like, I always love my dogs and cats. I'd never think of eating them. Why do I think it's okay to eat these other animals? And then the cruelty, like my grandmother used to, she was a bookkeeper for a meat packing plant, and that place freaked me out. We'd go stay summers with her in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you'd walk through. It was weird. It was a really uneasy feeling. You could feel and hear the death. Like it was disturbing. It was really was, but we just don't. Yeah, it's easy to just walk past it in ignorance. Cora says brainwashed. Absolutely. Bill says we were following habitual parent and being sold disease through advertising. Anne says nice background. Thank you. That's exactly right. I'm not the one. My one of my boys puts up my podcast for me. I'm not sure if he put up Michael Moss yet, but I interviewed Michael Moss, Pulitzer Prize winner, author, and he wrote that uh, salt sugar fat, or was the book? Maybe you guys probably know which one I'm talking about. Salt sugar fat, I believe, or fat sugar salt something. Amazing book, and I can't remember the title. Michael Moss. Anyway, and he talks about like literally these companies taking and hiring the chemical engineers to literally change the composition of these frankenfoods to make us more addicted. By even talking about bliss point, where it's not too sweet but not just sweet enough, the crunch, how long it lasts in the mouth, the melting factor, crazy stuff. So we're literally have to be the better advertiser, right? So if we're going to try and sell a healthy lifestyle to someone, we have to sell them on the vision of living a different life and feeling normal is thriving, living, feeling good, waking up with good energy. Of course, you still have your day-to-day stresses and things happen, but we don't know what it's like to feel normal because we start out not feeling well. When we were little kids, you're running, you're doing your thing. But as we grow in and start eating these unhealthy foods, it takes its toll even on an early age. And we forget what it's like, or never truly appreciate what it's like to feel normal, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that's the big problem there. But wow, we've been going. Who knew I could talk to myself and you guys for an hour and 11 minutes? But I really appreciate you guys hanging out and being my guest on the live. Anne and Bill and Cora and Rose and Leah. Who else has been on here? If I miss you, I apologize. Sandra, Paul, Peachy Rose. I said that already. Cat Kit, and all of you guys are awesome. Ronaldo. And so that's been really fun. Karen Gervain, thoughts on intermittent fasting, 18.6, and effect on blood pressure. Okay. If blood pressure is too low, would electrolytes be recommended? So let's talk about intermittent fasting first. Absolutely can be very helpful. Blood pressure is an interesting entity. So those are two things. There's two diagnoses that need to be very careful when you're switching to a plant-based diet. That is going to be high blood pressure and diabetes, because you're typically taking medications to control these things. That when you switch to a whole food plant-based diet and you start getting healthier, your system improves and it no longer needs those medications. So that's also really important to be monitoring on a regular basis. And I'm talking daily. On intermittent fasting with high blood pressure, first of all, are you on medications? If you're on medications, measure your blood pressure regularly, including daily. And if it's consistently under 120, or you're feeling dizzy upon standing, or you suddenly have no energy, you need to let your doctor know right away that you think some of your blood pressure medications need to be decreased. Okay. What intermittent fasting does, I think, that helps with your blood pressure, it's going to definitely accelerate your weight loss. It will allow your body to digest. It may do a lot of different things. It's less stressful when you have a shorter window of time. It's less thinking about what food eating. Stress is a big part of blood pressure. Avoiding sodium, of course, is a big thing. But I think as you lose the weight, and you decrease your inflammation, your blood pressure will start to drop. Now, I have some patients who are still on blood pressure medications on a whole food plant-based diet. But they've been on medications for a long, long time. And sometimes people don't come off blood pressure medications. Most of the time they can at least have reduced. But don't be disappointed, guys, if you don't fully reverse your diabetes or if you don't fully stop your blood pressure medications, even when you've been very 100% on the diet, because your body is at a state of years of dealing with certain things. Damage has been done, and sometimes some of that damage is not reversible. And I say this with confidence because I've taken care of thousands of patients. And when you see, for example, in diabetes, when you're diagnosed with diabetes, when you get that diagnosis from your doctor's office in that moment of time where they're reading back to you a blood test, you've taken a decade to get to that point at least, because that process of becoming diabetic takes about 10 years on average. And sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's longer, it just depends. And so understand that your pancreas has been dealing with all these high blood sugars for a period, a very long time. So there may have been damage to the pancreas in that time where it cannot produce enough insulin to control your blood sugars. Even though you may be insulin sensitive at this point, you still may require certain medications. Now, some people are also type 1.5, so I'm talking about adults. If you develop an autoimmune type of diabetes in your later years, usually typically over 30, and I'm seeing more and more of these patients, they require insulin. Now, their journey onto insulin and the amount of insulin will vary because the pancreas just starts slowing down. And I've only seen a couple of cases where people come in making very, very small amounts of insulin on this autoimmune side of things and seeing that improve. I've had a few cases recently that I've seen. For example, it's what we measure as C-peptide, which tells me how much insulin someone's producing, actually double and triple in a period of 3 to 4 months. So that is really exciting, but I'm a little hesitant to get too excited or hopeful because it may revert back. I don't know yet. So this is an evolving situation. But anyway, so don't be disappointed in yourself. What you need to do is just focus on making your body as healthy as you can at that moment. But I would say the intermittent fasting does help blood pressure in the sense that you lose the weight. And the question also was, when blood pressure is too low, what electrolytes would be recommended? So first of all, why do you have low blood pressure? Okay. Are you on medications? You need to stop the medications. That's why you have too blood pressure. Now, sometimes people think a normal blood pressure is low blood pressure. I am 5'7", and my blood pressure runs regularly at 102 to 104 on top and in the 60s on the bottom. Okay, so that is normal blood pressure. I am not symptomatic. I have tons of energy. I can get up without feeling dizzy. And that's a normal blood pressure, even at someone at my height, and I'm taller than the average woman. So if you're a smaller human, that's even more normal. As a man, my height or taller, that's probably on the lower end of normal as well. But if you're not on medications and you're symptomatic, now remember, not just even blood pressure medications can make you hypotensive or low blood pressure. It can be prostate medications, a variety of different other medications, maybe some other medications that like spironolactone are used for acne, which is actually a diuretic as well, can make you, so people are thinking, oh, I'm not on blood pressure medication, but maybe they're on something for acne or something like that. So just some thoughts there to be thinking about. And so when you are looking at why you have low blood pressure, are you symptomatic or are you just seeing a number and worried that that's low blood pressure? Now, if you actually are having hypotensive problems and you're not on blood pressure medications, you need to see a cardiologist because something is not working correctly. Your body is a system and it's a closed loop. So it's aware, are you drinking enough fluids, making sure you're well hydrated? That could be the issue. Maybe you have heart failure. Maybe you have an electrolyte issue. Maybe you have a heart block. Maybe your heart's beating too low. Maybe, there's lots of different things that can cause a low blood pressure. Maybe there's something wrong with the kidneys. again, many, many things, and that should be fully evaluated. So I say if you're not symptomatic and you're just seeing in those lower 100s, that may be normal for you. Again, you might want to just run it by your doc. I wouldn't just say consume electrolytes unless you have an issue like SIADH, which is where you're losing sodium and people cannot feel well and they may need certain electrolytes. Or if you're running a very long race, definitely over probably 2.5, 3 hours, then you might want to think about some electrolyte replacement. But that's in, more an extreme exercise setting. Karen says no medication, blood pressure was healthy until implementation of fasting. Now 84/55 and causing fatigue, interfering with the ability to exercise. So Karen, what I would be worried about is, are you eating enough food, right? You may be eating a too low calorie diet and not drinking enough fluid. So if you're seeing swelling, you need to definitely have some blood work done. You need to double check your blood pressure cuff, make sure it's measuring accurately if you're doing that at home, unless you're doing it manually. And you definitely need to make sure you're consuming enough calories, because if you're not consuming enough calories, and I don't care what diet that is, you could actually be protein deficient. And trust me, I use that very lightly. The only times I've seen patients low in protein is, one, they're not eating enough food, or two, they're in a burn unit and it's literally seeping out of them. Let's see. Yeah, especially if you're finding fatigue and exercise, I'm worried that you might not be eating enough food and that you're fasting too much. You need to eat more food. In my first thoughts. Cora says mine is 85 to 95, 55, and I'm 5'7" too. Yeah, and I maybe dipped to 98 a few times, but most of the time it's right around 102, 104. That's typical of mine. So again, it just depends on the person. And as long as you're not symptomatic and you have tons of energy, you're feeling well, you should be okay. But if you're having symptoms, which, Karen, you're mentioning symptoms, definitely need to be evaluated. And my concern would be that you're consuming enough calories. And I've seen that a few times. It's rare, but definitely has happened in the past. So those are really great questions. Really good. Sabine asks, what would cause red, swollen feet in type 1 diabetic, vegan, low salt, consume too much sweets? It depends. If they're both red and swollen, the edema, it can be a variety of things. Is your blood sugar too high? Did you stop a diuretic? There could be a variety of things going on there. If it's painful and red and tender, that could be an infection. You definitely need to be seen to make sure there's nothing more serious occurring. A variety of things could be going in there. Foods recently, but correcting this. I'm not sure what that means, Sabine. But yeah, I just want to, it's not painful. That's good. If you have the feet and diabetics are really a concern, right? Because if you're a diabetic, you actually may not feel things. So that's the other thing you got to be careful of. How is your overall sensation in your feet as a diabetic? You may have heard of doing those monofilament tests where they take a little, so like it looks like fishing line, maybe a little stiffer, and you take that and you poke the bottom of the feet of our diabetics when you check their feet annually to make sure that they have sensation. And because the nerves start dying off when the diabetes occurs, because it's literally killing the nerves and you can't feel. So if that's the case and not painful, your sensation, make sure that's intact. But the swelling, if it's painful, and especially in the calf, I'm just going to say this. I know you said yours isn't painful, but you worry about blood clotting, and that could be an issue. But if it's both feet swollen and red, varicose veins, maybe you stood on your feet too long, could be an electrolyte imbalance. It could be a variety of different things. Did that test and things are not as good as they used to be. I'm sorry. But if this doesn't go away, if you start having other symptoms systemically, like a fever or something, or you're noticing that the swelling doesn't go away with your feet being up for a few hours, you should probably have someone peek at you and make sure you're okay. For sure. There's lots of different things could be going on. the redness ends at the ankles. Yeah, definitely make sure because there's a lot of weird stuff that can go on our feet. We don't appreciate our feet till we can't walk with them. If you ever had a broken toe, you know what I'm talking about. Um, those are excellent question, guys. It's already been close to an hour and a half, and you guys have been very patient with me. Um, if this is found beneficial, you guys think this is helpful, let me know, and I'll be happy to do that. And send all your friends our way. Don't forget plantbasedhealth.com and healthyhumanrevolution.com. We have some courses there and some trying to answer as many questions as you can. If you guys ever have comments, leave them on our videos. Make sure you subscribe to this or tell your friends about it. And if you have any guests that you'd like to see on the podcast, let me know and I'll do my best to get them. Sometimes I'm too little podcast for them to entertain, but I'll try and I'll keep working on it. So yes, it's been great. Thank you. Very helpful. Sorry I missed the beginning. Thanks so much. You should be able to watch it again, though, Rose. And Karen said, absolutely, please do more. Thank you. Appreciate it live. Thank you for your time. You're welcome. And thank you guys for paying attention to me on a Friday afternoon. You guys are awesome. And Paul, I believe his name was, I'll be seeing soon in an appointment. So how delightful. So thanks, guys, for watching. And it's been awesome. I've really enjoyed my time with you today. Sam Bean says hi. Thank you. You guys are welcome. Have a great weekend. Take some time to yourself and eat some plants. Bye.